Hi, it's Claire and welcome to Needle Say More. Today I'm going to show you how to create a pipe seam. So you can see here this creates a really nice decorative textured seam that can be used in fashion garments and home accessories. Let's get started. To make the pipe seam you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, some 18mm bias binding and some piping cord. So the first thing I need to do is I need to change the standard foot on my machine to a zipper foot. So this is going to allow me to sew really close to the piping to get a really nice finish. And then on my machine, the needle's automatically set to the left hand position. So it's really important to put your needle, move your needle over. I move mine to the central position so that I'm not hitting the zipper foot with my needle. So you're going to get your piping cord and you're going to place it inside the bias binding. If you wanted a specific colour, you could make your own bias binding. But I'm just for the matter of this sample, I'm just going to show you using pre-made bias binding. So you want to put the piping cord inside the middle of the bias binding, and then you want to fold it back on itself, and that's what's going to create our piped edge. So you want to put it on the right side of the fabric and line up all the raw edges like that. It's a bit fiddly, so we're going to line it up like that. So all the raw edges are going to hold the piping cord to the fabric. So I'm going to take the 2 raw edges of the bias binding with the piping cord inside, and I'm going to use sewing clips to attach this to the right side of the fabric. So you kind of have to unfold the bias binding, push the piping cord to the bottom, line up with all the raw edges and then clip it. So it is actually much easier if you do it on the table because you can hold it flat. Just this last little bit was a bit tricky. Okay, it's on. So right side of the fabric, the bias binding's been opened out, the piping cord is in the middle, all 3 raw edges are together, so the 2 raw edges of the bias binding and the raw edge of the fabric. So I'm going to use the zipper foot to allow me to get as close as I can to the piping cord to give a really nice edge. So I'm just going to move the camera around now so you can see sewing from the other side. So the fabric and the piping cord are, and the bias binding underneath my presser foot, and I'm just going to move my needle position over to the right slightly so I can get nice and close. Yeah, that looks about right there. So sew and reverse at the start of your seam. And then the zipper foot is allowing me to sew really nice and close to that piping cord. So remember to reverse at the end. So the zipper foot is allowed me to sew really close to the edge of the piping cord. So I've sewn in reverse, sewn all the way down and sewn in reverse. So you can see that is the start of how our pipe seam is going to look. So I'm now going to attach the other side of my seam, right sides facing, like that. So the bias binding and the piping cord are going to be sandwiched between the two layers, so that when I open it out, it's going to look like that. Now my tip is to sew it from the side you've just sewn on, so you can sew on top of that layer of stitching that we did in the previous step to ensure that it's really nice and close to that piping cord to give a really nice finish. So I'm going to line up the fabric and the needle so I'm sewing on top of that line to give a really nice finish. So sew and reverse like we did previously. Then I'm going to follow that line of stitching all the way down the seam. I'm going to reverse stitch at the end to secure it, and then let's open it and have a look. Oh, that looks great, doesn't it? So this is my piped seam. So you can see it's got that layer of piping cord inside, which gives it a really nice textured finish. So you might find this around the edge of cushions. Sometimes on coats, you will have it along the seams to add texture, to add colour. Sometimes you get it on trousers, skirts. It's quite a versatile seam and great for adding a pop of colour or texture. I love the bright coral on the white, and you might see this on home interiors as well. If it was on a garment, I would go ahead and I would overlock that seam just to stop the raw edges from fraying further. If it was on a cushion cover that was more decorative than functional, you could just leave it like that. If you've got any questions about this pipe seam, please let me know in the comments.